Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Marj Britt, founder of Called by Love and Living Loving Legacy, and all of the many wonderful things that have come out of that, including our last year of talking about the 4 stages of your lives. I am so delighted that you're here with us today. And I love to start with an invocation. And so we simply say, Come, Holy Spirit. O beloved one, fill us with your presence, fill us with your power, move in us, move through us, move as us, in our lives, in our communities, and in the world. And so it is. So we simply say in that awareness of Come, Holy Spirit, allow the universe to be guided, to be directed by that same Holy Spirit, which of course it always already is, that I am presence that is constantly, forever with us when we're conscious of it and even when we are unconscious of it, guiding us, directing us. And Toni and I are going to be talking about some of those amazing things today. One of the things I'm looking forward to toward the end of the call is telling you about how Toni and I got the absolute same download, word for word, absolute same download the morning after the election. We didn't know each other had gotten it. We hadn't talked to each other. We had no idea about it coming to both of us at the same time, the same words, and yet it happened. I had made a post in the Unity Ministers discussion group, and someone that had read that post said to Toni, "Have you been talking to Marj Britt?" Toni said, "No." And that was the beginning of that awareness of our being tuned in to the same channel, the same wavelength. And Toni and I have known that kind of being tuned in for a lot of years. And we have known each other for 40 years, ever since I became a student at the Unity Ministerial School, and Toni was the Dean of Admissions. We'll get more into that as we get into Toni's life. But before we get into the downloads and before we get into that, I simply want to welcome Reverend Toni Boehm, my beloved friend of over 40 years, a person that I have known and cherished, and that we've walked the same paths, we've inspired each other, we've worked with each other, we've introduced each other to more people, including me introducing Tom Zender to Toni Boehm as my beloved friend and saying, you really need to get acquainted with her. She's a person you can work with. So we'll talk more about that. But let's start, first of all, Toni, with the first act of your life. And I absolutely love that you were part of a family of people who absolutely uh, went back to your grandmother, actually. When you told me about your grandmother, I'll let you tell the story about that. But when were you born, Toni? What year and where were you born?
I was born in 1946 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, actually New Kensington, Pennsylvania. And I was born to My father was full-blooded Italian. His parents came over on the boat in 1902 with 9 children, and that included my father. And so when I was born, and my grandpa Cipolleti, uh, had told my mom and my dad that if they had a boy, he would give them $500. But if they had a girl, he would have given them nothing. And so my parents really, really wanted a boy. And so, in fact, that's how I got my name, because they were hoping that if they named me after my grandfather, that he might, and his name was Anthony. So they named me Toni, but alas, they didn't get the money. And so it was, my mom and dad were very, very young when they had me, barely out of teenage and perhaps still in the latter edges of teenage. And so that was pretty tumultuous because they still had a lot of living to do. And then interestingly, 18 months later, they had my sister Rosalie, and Rosalie was named after my Nona. And so we had Toni and Rosalie after Anthony and Rosalie. And Rosalie and I were very, very close. I took care of Rosalie, to the point of one day, being Italian, I thought that she was really too hairy. So I don't know where my mom was, but I took her up to the bathroom. I put her head in the toilet and I began to shave her like I watched my dad. I was only 3 years old.
Oh my goodness. It's stories of our childhood.
I know we have lots of sister stories like that.
Well, and one of the pictures that is in the email that everyone got is this picture of you when you were just 3 years old.
I
And
love that. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
it's a precious, precious picture. And tell me about what you see in that picture as you look at it, through your eyes now, and you see that 3-year-old and that cowgirl hat.
Now, it's a cowboy. If you noticed, even the bathrobe was more of a cowboy hat, because the influence of that pre-birth experience, I see it so clearly now, affected my whole life. I really, my whole life, tried to be the best boy ever so that my parents would love me. And so in that picture, I see a curious, if you notice my eyes are like this, I see a devilish, I see a impish, I see somebody who has at 3 years old a lot of style and knows what they want to how they want to have their picture taken. So there's determination in there too. And so that picture always has meant a lot to me from the moment that I found it as a memory of that little girl who wanted to be the best boy ever, was just so determined, and had a little bit of style even at 3 years old.
So I hope you have that framed and sitting somewhere where you can see it every single day of your life, because it is such a powerful imprint of the person that you are now. And I
Yes, and I
always
don't, but thank you for the idea.
yeah, consider getting it out
Yeah.
and keeping it up. A very, very powerful imprint from your childhood, very early on. And then the second picture in this first act of your life, and I just made up the 4 acts. uh,
Yes.
so they can be flexible. They can move in and out of the 25-year frameworks that are part of moving from 1 to 100, which is why I used 25 years. And then the second picture that it was you chose, and you chose all of these for your email. The second picture that I chose for you is you and your mother, and a bit different in your demeanor in that picture.
So the picture of the 3 year old, you see, she was impish, she was smiles, she was carefree. But very shortly after that picture, As I said, my mom and dad were very young. My dad came into the room. I don't quite remember this, but he told me this later. My dad came into the room and he said to me that he was going to the store to get a loaf of bread. And I asked him if he would take me. And he said, "No, honey, not this time." And he walked out the door and we never saw him again.
Wow.
He just left our lives. And I didn't see him again until I was 42. So that kind of sets up this next picture with my mom, because I feel like it, as that little child, that I loved my dad a lot. And I was just kind of left spinning because my mother was a paranoid schizophrenic, at that time undiagnosed, but acting out a lot. And so it became very sullen. I didn't smile. And that picture just shows me sitting by my mom in one of her lucid moments. And she really was just so beautiful. But yet she was so disturbed. And I see now as an adult why my dad had to leave. He even told me later on when I met him when I was 42, he said, if I hadn't have left her, I might have killed her. He said that's how disturbed I was getting from her being disturbed. And so he left to save his own life. And then the other thing that happened after that was my mother took Rosalie and I down to the river, and she was going to drown all of us. And luckily, as the angels who I believe that I came in with, and I cry over the angels because they've been in my life at so many important times. At that moment that my mother was in the river with us, and I'm asking, I know this because I've had flashbacks. I'm asking, "Mama, why are you doing this?" And she was saying, "Because of your dad, because of your dad, because of your dad." And I'm going to talk about this later. So just at that moment, a police car comes by and sees us and comes in. He jumps in the water and he saves us. And then we're taken to our grandparents. And then from then on, at the age of four-ish, I live with my grandparents, and my grandmother becomes the stable feminine in my life. And she becomes so important to me because I don't know where you want to bring that picture in, but she becomes
Right
important,
here.
okay, because she went to college. She was born in 1902, and she went to college, and she married my grandfather. And soon after they married, and she was a teacher. So when they met, she was a teacher, and he worked on the roads. He was a roadman developing the roads, and he had her quit being a teacher because he didn't want a professional wife when he was not a professional. So all my life, she said to me, "Toni, never let anybody take you down. Never let anybody tell you what to do. Never let anybody take away your dream. Never let anybody." And so she always said to me, I expect you to do great things. I expect you to go to school. I expect you. And that just fed into my good boy syndrome, the intellect and all of that. So I feel like everything I did, I pursued out of wanting her to be proud of me for my accomplishments. So she
The
played a
other
big
thing you
part.
told me about her is that she was, I think you called her an early women's liber. I would call her an early feminist.
Yeah, exactly. So that she had those concepts. I don't think she ever marched or went for the women's vote or anything like that, but she had those concepts of even in the realization of what she did to herself. She had the realization of, and I don't want to sound sexist, but she said of, don't ever let a man dictate who you are or what you can do in life.
You know, I'm hoping that everyone is looking for the parallel realities that exist in all of our lives. That's one of the reasons that I love doing these 4 acts, is because we get glimpses of how we have had consciousness that we were born with, the first picture of you when you were 3 years old, that was unconscious, yet conscious awareness, but still unconscious. There was something in you that was that divine spark radiating, even at 3 years old. And then you begin to get the imprints of people in your family, of those around you. You begin to feel the imprints of your own ages. And um, I see that in my own life. I married when I was in my teens. My first child was born just 2 months, 6 weeks after I was 20. And so many things, parallel realities. Is this part of what attracts us to one another ultimately? Is this part of what we begin to see in our journey back into this oneness that is our destiny as souls? One presence, one power, one consciousness. And it's amazing to really see some of those things. Even the imprint from being told not you couldn't do something. Uh, when I applied to law school, for example, after I finished my bachelor's degree and was accepted with a full scholarship if I would write for the law school review, my husband at that time, Bud's father, said, I need to tell you, I don't want to be married to a lawyer. Same kind of, and I didn't go. I didn't go. So those become part of the motivation, the movement that takes us forward. And they're shared impulses sometimes, and we don't always understand them. They just happen, and we react to them based on cultural values. One was that you don't go more to law school when your husband is a truck driver. And so it really, really fascinating to be aware of all of those kinds of parallel realities. So look for them as Toni is telling her story. And so, Toni, as we shift into your 20s, there's a picture that you sent to me that was this one. And well, you tell us where you are in the picture.
Okay, I want to set the picture up though, Marge,
All
because
right.
when I was 10 years old, my mother at 5. When I was 5, my mother remarried. And so now we had a stepfather, and he was a wonderful man, but emotionally unavailable, totally. So there wasn't really any father figure in my life except my grandpa, and I loved him dearly. However, then at 10, my mother really gets bad, and she ends up having to be taken to a mental institution. So at the age of 10, I become in charge of the family because my father is working. I have a younger sister. And so it takes me deeper and deeper into my sullenness. And I can remember as a teenager, people would say to me, you're so attractive. If you would just smile, just once in a while, smile. And I can remember so clearly, Marge, sitting there every time somebody would say it and saying, if you knew my life, if you knew the hell I was living, you would not be asking me to smile, because my mom went into the hospital off and on all the time. And when I was almost 16, she came out of the hospital, got pregnant, had a baby, and then went back into the hospital. And now at 16, when I was graduating early, I was going to graduate at 17, when I should be having the last bits of fun that you could have as a teenager, now I have a baby to take care of. And I'm really angry. So that sets up this next picture that as an adult later in my 40s, when I see this picture of me, I had to probably be about 25-ish in this picture because I found unity when I was 28. And we'll talk about that. So in that picture, I was the one on the my sister Rose was in the blue on the one far end, and then I had an aunt beside me, but I was the second one in. I look at it, I was very attractive, like Rosalie. We were just sexy Italian women, and yet I'm in that picture like this, like don't take my picture, almost like I was sucking on a prune of lemon. I mean, it's like the first time I saw that picture, I was like, oh my God, it was just such a realization of how unhappy I was. And by that time, I was married. I married a guy I met in high school. I met him when I was no, I didn't meet him in high school. I was in nurses training when I met him, and then got pregnant, and we had this. Then we had a baby, so I was done taking care of my sister because now I'm in nurses training, and I have my own baby, and so I'm just still generally unhappy, and so that picture just reflects for me the epitome of the unhappiness of how I was living life when I was a healthy, wise, you know, actually beautiful young woman.
Yeah. And is your child still living?
Yes, yes. I was just like you. I really had barely turned 20 when I had her, and but it didn't interfere with me going to ministerial school because I, during the 60s, then became a feminist myself, or at least a radical in that moment. And I went on the steps of the school and gathered a lot of, because normally you were kicked out of school if you got pregnant and you couldn't finish. But I was coming up to an end of a term. I could have had where we had to go through rotations. I was coming to an end of a rotation. I could take the 4 months off, have the baby, come back, and I would just skip a rotation. And then I was willing to come back in and do the rotation after I had graduated or finished with school. So I got a group of people and we went on the school stairs, and I was protesting that pregnant women couldn't stay in school in the 60s, for God's sake. We're all, this is the 60s. We need to be able to do what we need to do, and a woman has a right to do what she wants to do if getting pregnant is part of it. And they changed the rules. They changed the rules. So
Amazing.
I was a pioneer. I've always been a pioneer. I've been on the leading edge of something new unfolding my whole life.
See, I see that in myself also. And how do we get assigned these roles? The universe gives us. It's fascinating. So this was a picture you sent me of you in when you graduated from nursing school. Where did you go to nursing school?
My first went to Allegheny Valley Nursing School, and it was connected with Penn State. So it was a 3-year diploma program. You didn't come out with a bachelor's. So I did everything the difficult way. I got a 3-year diploma. Then later on, I had to go back and get a 4-year bachelor's degree. And then I got the master's degree. Then I got the nurse practitioner's degree. And then I got a doctorate degree, but everything I did it under the constraints of always being married and pressure and having juggling all these balls, whereas a lot of kids just go out of college, go out of high school, go to college. And I met so many people along the way, especially women who were they were starting a lot of programs. Like there was a master's PhD program rolled into one in nursing, and and I met a woman who was 27 and she was just graduating, and I'm sitting there thinking that could have been me. That could have been me, but no, I had to choose the hard road. But it's okay. It's all been perfect. All of it's been perfect. So at 28, my husband at the time, who was, as you were telling your story, and I don't really want to talk about him, but because that's his story, his life is his story. But when we met, he was going to college, and then once we got married, he just out of the blue decided he was going to quit college and started selling stuff. Didn't wasn't working all the time. So when I graduated, I was working a lot of double shifts, taking care of the baby. So we had a lot of turmoil in our relationship, is the point I want to make. So at 28, he comes in, it was 1973. So I wasn't quite 28 yet. I don't know. I can't do the math in my head. So in 1973, he comes home and he says, the company wants to transfer me. And I said, and our relationship's really, so I'm thinking, is this something I want to do? And I said, where? He said, I don't know, Kansas or Missouri. And I don't mean any disrespect. And I said to him, because we're from the East Coast, I said, where the Indians are? You expect me to go out where the Indians are? I mean, I had this picture that there still were Indians on horses, riding. And he goes, I don't think it'll be that bad. He said, we get to go out in February and we'll get to look at it. Well, we came out, we looked in February, and I fell in love immediately. Just immediately, I fell in love. So it was one of those moments, Marj, that I look back now and I call them immaculate conception moments. Because the Immaculate Conception is metaphysically is where Mary says yes to the Holy Spirit, to the movement of the Christ in her. Will you bear this Christ, Mary? We don't think about that very often. We think about Christ Jesus, we think about Jesus being born, but really, Mary was the feminine in us, the feminine that says, I'm ready to be birthed in you, because I had so much masculine from wanting to be that boy and anger and upset, and now Mary, I'm having the Immaculate Conception. And I get this when I'm in my decision making to come to Kansas City. I get this powerful yes, which has happened a couple times in my life. And so the Immaculate Conception is birth through my saying yes. And I come to Kansas City, and I'm not here 3 days, and I meet a woman who lives across the street from the house we found. And the moment the door opens and our eyes meet, I know I've known this woman forever. I don't know anything about this stuff, but I know I've known this woman forever. And we talked for 6.5 hours from the time that door opened. And during that time, she asked me if I wanted to go to church with her on Sunday. I never even asked her what church she went to. I didn't care if it was Pentecostal, Lutheran, Methodist. I had a friend and I was going to go to church with her. And she took me to Unity. So now I'm 28 years old. And I walk in the doors of Unity. And Sig Paulson is the world headquarters. Sig Paulson is preaching. Janie does the meditation. I begin to cry. And I know I'm home. I still can bring tears. I know this is what I've been waiting for all my life. And I was just waiting to catch up to it. And I was so happy in that moment that I said yes to coming with my husband. And the interesting thing is he came too. But within 6 months, his decision was that he was allergic to the roses and he couldn't come back. And that was really then the beginning of the end for us. And shortly thereafter, we parted ways. So now I'm a single mom, and I'm just making my way. I'm working at a hospital here in Kansas City. I love where I'm working. I'm on OBGYN. I'm learning a whole new practice. And it was like I had been plopped in the middle. Everything in my life now was going good. I mean, the negativity of the marriage was gone. And he also left because he said, "You're just too powerful in your pursuit. And I can't handle it." Because I didn't say no. Because when I was working at the hospital, they said to me, "We're going to send you for your bachelor's degree. And then after you get your bachelor's degree, the medical director of the whole medical school, I don't know, he just took a shine to me. He had all the interns and everything, but he just took a shine to me in that labor and delivery. And he said, "I want to support you in going to nurse practitioner school." And this was, I mean, the beginning, March, of nurse practitioners. There couldn't have been, at that time, maybe 50 in the United States. There were only 2 or 3 schools. And I thought about it, and I went back to him and I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll become a nurse practitioner. So I got the bachelor's degree. I became a nurse. They sent me to nurse practitioner school. They set me up as the first nurse to ever run a clinic within the system. I was doing a well mother clinic, and then I moved from there into doing a family clinic, and I was just loving it. It was awesome.
And this is when you connect with Hallmark.
Yes. So then after I finished all that, and they did so much for me, Hallmark, now this would be 1976. So Hallmark, let me back that up. This would have been around 1977, because Herbert Benson had just written in 1976 the first article on stress and stress management. And some executive at Hallmark, and Hallmark was the Fortune 500, they were so progressive, they decided they wanted and nobody was talking about this back then, Marge, they wanted a nurse practitioner to come in and turn their medical department into a wellness clinic, and we would focus on wellness rather than people coming down because they were sick. They could still do that, and we had 8 beds back there, not permanent beds, but in the medical department, because we had 17,000 employees across the world internationally, and so out of 300 applicants, I ended up getting the job, and it was such a life changer for me, because they put me through the whole Peter Drucker management program, and I was just blossoming. But I was also breaking glass ceilings, because there had been 2 doctors who had always run the clinics, and they were very upset, and that I was coming in and I was going to be running the clinic, and that all their job was to write protocols for me. So that I could run the clinic and do what I needed to do. And I don't want to get into everything that happened. They put so many roadblocks in front of me and obstacles, and I climbed over every one of them. Just climbed right over them. It's like, no, you're not stopping me. Do what you think you're going to do, but you're not going to stop me, And so it was just a really interesting time in my life, and then I stayed there for 8 years. But during that time, so now I'm divorced, and I'm still going to church at Unity. I mean, I'm like a groupie, just a groupie. I go every moment that I can get to Unity. I'm taking classes. I'm getting befriended by now Martha Judici. Sig and Janie had left. Martha Judici and Frank had come in as the ministers, and I'm really Martha takes me under her, Reverend Martha takes me under her wing, and she says she sees something in me. And she asked me if I want to go, because she said, "Toni, I see you as a natural healer." So she takes me to Springfield. Norm Shealy was doing his first remember when the energy medicine, and the hands-on healing. He was doing the first one that he ever did, and we went down to Springfield and for the weekend and attended that. And Carolyn Mace was there, but I didn't know who Carolyn Mace, because at that time she hadn't written her book. And so it was just a very, very interesting experience. And then I come back. I'm trying to get everything in order here, and during that time with Frank and Martha, I see a man in church. I look up and he's looking at me, and I look at him, and I know in that moment, my God, that's the man I'm going to marry. I just know it. There was nothing about me that anybody could say, you're not going to marry that man. That's the man I'm going to marry. And he walked down and he smiled at me. And my girlfriend said, do you know who that is? And I said, no. And she said, that's Jay Boehm. He works with us at Unity. I said, no. She goes, yeah. He was like Unity had 17,000 employees, but they had this thing called the A-list. It was like the top 30 people. He's in the A-list. So the next day I go to work and I look him up on the microfiche, because there wasn't any computers then. Look him up on the microfiche, and I find out that he's divorced, he's single, he has some kids, and that was enough for me. So I take a deep breath and I go over to the phone and I call him up and I ask him out. I ask him if he wants to go to Handel's Messiah that they produce every year in Kansas City. And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And that was the beginning of 42 years now of marriage. So all those things started working together, and I'm working at Hallmark. So of course it was just this wonderful little love affair. And then after I'd been there about 8 years, I'm now married to Jay, and I'm there about 8 years when I get a call from the American Nurses Association, who had their world headquarters there, and one of the top executives over there said, you don't know me, but I've been watching you. She said, and we want you to come join the staff at the American Nurses Association. And I was like, oh, I don't know about that. But yet I also had felt like I had done everything I wanted to do we had set up the wellness clinic. So now it was every year, the blood drives, the programs, what new programs could I do, blah, blah, blah. And it was, for me, starting to get a little routine. So I went over and ended up saying yes. And I became the senior staff specialist in charge of credentialing and accreditation. And we were just writing all the credentialing and programs for nurses, like emergency room, ICU. So we were writing all those certification programs. So it was a very, very exquisite experience of learning how to do policies, procedures, looking at best standards, but more best standards of practice, and what do best standards of practice mean, and how do you develop best standards of practice. But Marj, I wasn't there 3 days when I knew I had made a big mistake. I was just unhappy. It just wasn't what I wanted to do. I either wanted to be in hands-on or I wanted to be in ministry. I just couldn't figure out how I was going to get into ministry. So lo and behold, fast forward a little bit, they decide to move to Washington, D.C. to be closer to the lobbyists. So they offer this big downsizing package. And I walk in the morning and tell them, I'm taking the downsizing, blah, blah, blah. I'm kind of like, I'm out of here. Anything I can do, I'm out of here. And that afternoon, I can't even believe how this works. This was February of 87. That afternoon, I get a call from Unity, and Unity asked me if I would come apply for the Dean of Administration. It was actually the Dean of Administration. I would be in charge of writing policy and procedure for education, supporting the writing of curriculum, working with the Dean of Education to manage faculty and faculty meetings and SEE, CE back then, CEP back then. And my heart was just, I left there, the A&A, and I did not know what I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to do that anymore. And and I went and applied and I got the job. And my first day on the job at Unity was, I believe it was February 27th, it might have been 28th of 1987. And it was the day that they were breaking ground for Silent Unity. And Eric Butterworth was there, the Pearsons were there, all the big of, and I got to, my first day, I got to be with all those people. And I knew I had found heaven. I just knew it.
That's beautiful, Toni. And then you later, under Tom Zender's role, become a vice president of Unity.
So I was in the position for almost 20 years. Well, I was 1987. Well, then I come into the dean's position. 3 weeks later, Connie calls me because now I've gone through my bachelor's degree. I've gone through the nurse practitioner. Then Hallmark put me through a master's degree in nursing through the University of Missouri, Kansas City. And then I was taking classes towards a doctorate. And then 3 weeks in, Connie calls me and she says, "Would you like to be a Unity minister?" And I said, "Oh my God, I'd love to be a Unity minister." She said, "Well, we'd like that role to have a Unity minister. So here's what we're going to do." She said, "You'll go to school in the morning." She said, "You'll work in the afternoon." She said, "You might have to work a little harder." She said, "But we'll have the secretaries type all your papers. You'll do all the research, but the secretaries will type all your papers. We'll pay for your school. We'll buy all your books." And I was like, "Oh my God, the universe has just handed me the world on a golden platter." And so I said yes. I said yes, and so I stayed in that position. But I want to tell you a funny story. When I graduated from ministerial school, and I hadn't really taught any classes, and I just had, in course of ministerial school, you have to do a lot and present in front of your classmates and everything. And I was very clear about my role as the Dean of Administration. And I'll never forget that was in June. We graduated June 6th, 1989. We were the centennial class. And I remember going into the vice president's office and him saying to me, "We've got a scheduling problem." I said, "What's wrong?" "Well, somebody got sick and they have appendicitis, one of the faculty, and they can't teach the prosperity class. And this was like Wednesday, and it starts next Monday." And I said, "Okay." I said, "I'll get right on it. I'll find somebody." He goes, "No, I already found somebody." And I said, "Oh, great. Who? I'll contact them." And he just kept looking at me. And I said to him, "You're not talking about me." And he just kept looking at me. I said, "No." I said, "No, I am not a teacher." I said, "I'm here for administration. That was our agreement." I said, "You never said I had to teach anything." And he just kept looking at me and never said a word. And then he picked up the binder and then he handed it to me and he said, "Be ready by Monday. Take whatever time you need to do that." That was the beginning of my teaching career. And I do take that back. It was because it was metaphysics, and I had just graduated, because I did teach a couple of classes at UMKC as an instructor in physical assessment. So I had taught on that graduate level, the physical assessment classes. So I don't want to leave that out, but the idea of teaching metaphysics, and I'd already been in Unity for 14, 15 years, but it was like I was so green and such a novice, and who was I to be teaching anybody anything? So I started
You're
that.
making a shift. And let's just sort of zip through some of these pictures from this time of your life with your three sisters. And here you can see you and your younger sister, that's just 2 years younger, and then your youngest sister.
Yes, the baby. And so all these shifts are going on. So I'm in that position for till 2001, and Tom Zender came in 2000. You introduced us. We really, really liked each other. We just felt there was a, what's that word? There was a compatibility, but there's another word for it, a compadreness, and so then Tom says, "Will you come over? Will you leave being the dean, and will you come over and be the director of strategic planning?" And and I said yes. In a way, I said yes because there were things going on behind the scenes that I wasn't really privy to. I didn't know that he was going to prepare me for vice president, but there were things that were happening. So I said yes. I went over to do strategic planning, and in part of strategic planning, I learned grant writing. I learned through Tom, who worked at General Electric, and under, oh my God, who was that guy that was just it'll come to me. I can't remember his name, but Tom worked under him, and Tom taught me vision, mission, and core values, and what that means, and what it means to an organization. So Tom played quite the role in my life of taking me to the next level, the next preparing me for the next level. And then
And
with
of course, he came from Unity of Tustin.
Justin, exactly. You were the one
His
that
background with Unity had been accelerated by me. When
yeah.
I got a letter saying, "Do you know anyone?" And I sent it off to Tom, and I said, Is this you?" It was from Connie. And "Is this you?" And he set it aside and was awakened in a dream and told to go find that letter and respond to it. And that's how he became president and CEO of Unity Worldwide, of Unity World Headquarters.
and so and so I owe a lot to Tom, and then and during that time as a strategic director, we did some strategic projects. We revitalized Daily Word on TV, and we got Bo Bridges, and we got Della Reese, and I got to go to their houses and film. And I was the people from New York said, "You're the producer and director. That's what you are. We're just here to follow you." It's like, I don't know anything. but we had a lot of fun. And so then the next year I became the vice president of Unity as we moved from the school that we had into a school that was going to be accredited. So then fast forward to 2005, so I've been in the position, and I get to go to the World Parliament of Religions in 2004 with Tom and Deepak Chopra, and because Unity took Deepak Chopra and Joan Borasinko over as because we were getting inducted into the World Parliament of Religions as our own, I don't want to say religion, but our own entity within the parliament, because we had a teaching, and the teaching was accepted as part of the world parliament. And so that's why part of the foundation of Unity and the teachings of Unity, based upon the mysticism and metaphysics of the teachings of Jesus, are just so important to me. Not that I call myself a Christian, because I don't, but I certainly know that mysticism, Marge, when you pray the prayer, "Come, Holy Spirit, come," where Jesus says in Acts, "Stay, and the Holy Spirit will come upon you." And the Holy Spirit comes upon us. That Spirit comes to quicken us, to quicken that Christ frequency. And I realize now that that Christ, what we call Christ consciousness, is a frequency that gets quickened within us and becomes a powerhouse that leads us into experiences and initiations that we might unfold through that immaculate conception of saying yes over and over and over and over into surrender. And it goes to the Sermon on the Mount, where they say, "Consider the lilies of the field, how they take no thought." That's surrender. When you find the spaciousness of surrender, and you surrender into that "I know nothing, Because before that, we're just in the John the Baptist intellect. And we think we know everything. And trust me, I was one of the glorified thinking I know everything. I want to say I wasn't obnoxious, but there were probably a lot of people that thought I was obnoxious. And then that discovery of I know that I know nothing takes us into surrender. And surrender, Marj, takes us into trust.
Yeah.
Trust of the one presence. We can babble all we want about the one presence and the one power, but if we don't trust that that Christ frequency that flows through us, because we are now a conduit for source energy to flow through, if we don't trust that energy to take us out of no fear, and so I'm going to tap into the political arena. I'm talking into ill health, all those things. That surrender takes us into knowing there is a power greater than we are, and it holds no fear. And then surrender takes us to trust, and trust takes us into what I like to call now, you move from immaculate conception to being the immaculate reception. And that takes us to where you and I had that same thought. Because when you're the immaculate reception, you are just receiving pure downloads from source. Every book I've written, and I've written 14 of them that express the soul's journey, I see now going back that my book, starting with the spiritual entrepreneur, finding that source within you, is an outpicturing of the soul's journey through my journey. And it's not everybody's journey, but they will tap into the things that I tapped into. And so when we trust to that point that we become the place of immaculate reception, then the immaculate conceptions are like this, and we become the receptive repository for, because as we trust the universe trusts us. So I'll stop and see if you have anything to say there.
So let's do a quick recap, because I don't want to leave Jay out.
That's my sweetheart.
Your sweetheart, your love.
Yes, that's after 42 years, he's just my soulmate.
And then the traveling, the world travels that you've done. And wow, 108 countries.
Yeah, so throughout this time, these 42 years, we've traveled to 108 countries. He's driven in almost 40 countries. And but the thing is, here's the kicker. He has been my muse. I don't care what it was that was part of the next, like when I went into the phase of the divine feminine, really opening up to what the divine feminine brings, not as a woman, but as a quality that starts to temper the divine masculine so that they can eventually have that place of sacred union, the marriage at Cana, so that they come in balance in harmonic resonance. Whatever it was that was part of my journey, that was my next step of understanding, he would take me to a sacred site, unbeknownst to me, because he would plan all the trips. He would take me to sacred sites that would unfold all kind of things within me. Like the very first, might have been the second trip we took together, he took me to Egypt and I got to lay in the sarcophagus. This was 40 years ago. And before tons of people now, but laying in that sarcophagus opened something with me. It was a
Stayed
power.
in that sarcophagus. I know.
Yeah, it just does something to you to be in that resonant chamber. And so then when I went through my divine feminine, I was really into the black Madonna and the dark feminine that awakens, pulls, and invites you into the shadow. She said to me in 1996, return to me, return to me. I am here to show you who you are not. And I had no clue what she meant. No clue. But she
Show
did.
you who you are not.
I'm not.
And that we're in a period like that now of divine dissolve, which we'll get to when we talk about that download. But first, let's talk about your books. This, you said this was one of your favorites, Soul Mastery.
Soul Mastery, and Soul Mastery was a download, and here's how I've been getting my downloads. My downloads have been coming in dreams, and they have come in golden, luminous, radiant, sacred geometric symbols. Thousands and thousands of symbols will come in a dream. They might last 2 nights. I'll have these downloads. But what I know is that it's part of the Immaculate Reception, and I'm receiving these downloads, but the downloads are coming in sacred symbols that I have to unravel. And I unravel them because I will be given 1, 2, 3 words. And it'll be those words that are the threads that I then start to pull that will unravel a whole book in usually a very short period of time. But Soul Mastery, which I published in 2020, was a download around an idea of, actually came from Mr. Fillmore, about, he says that dimensions are not places or locations, they are states of consciousness. And in the fourth dimension in man, his article that was unpublished, that is now published in one of the book Unity Mystical Treasures that I edited, he talks about the idea that these dimensions hold different, I don't know if he used energies or frequencies, but whatever. Think about it, he was writing this in the 30s and they weren't even talking this language. And so this was part of what got pulled out of me, that I was to, through Soul Mastery, set up those 3 dimensions and put the behaviors and the actions of what we do when we're in each dimensional consciousness. And there's many, many, many dimensions. I just happen to use 3rd, 4th, and 5th, because 3rd is that dimension of dense energy that holds survival oriented. 4th is that first glimmer of I am that starts to awaken. And then 5th is when we really start popping into that Christ frequency and tapping into there. And there are different behaviors.
So that's part of what we're experiencing now as a country, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And we're going into it in ways that are shocking sometimes and surprising sometimes. And we are in a period of unknowing, which is required.
And it is required. There's the key, Marj. The take no thought is that the surrender. The surrender. You know, I've been working with a lot of people the last couple of weeks over the election, and what comes up for me as I sit back without judgment about anything or where anybody is how do I support them to move to no fear? How do I support them to know that the conspiracy theories, that all of those things are just part of the 3rd dimensional consciousness at play, and that the more we allow ourselves to go down the rabbit hole, the further away from the truth of the teachings we get. Because the truth of the teachings come to teach us that regardless, because the other download that I got around Soul Mastery was conscious neutrality. Conscious neutrality. And I actually got that. I think I wrote conscious neutrality before that, but I put it in the book in a new way. I received 33 tenets for conscious neutrality and how to stay in conscious neutrality, where you be the place of non-judgment, non-attachment, non-resistance. I call it the jar, that Jesus came not only to give us the whole love piece of harmonic resonance, but he came to give us the jar, non-judgment, non-attachment. That's what the Sermon on the Mount's all about, non-resistance. And when you can get the jar, when you get that jar and really you start living life from a consciousness, a fourth dimensional level of consciousness at least, that finds things interesting. You be curious and you be the presence of curious. When you be the presence of curious, when you be the presence of interesting, you aren't trying, you be. So the power of be becomes so important to conscious neutrality that lets you just say, this is interesting. Not going to put any judgment on it. Let's see where this takes me. I've had friends call me up and say, are you going to march with me when we don't have blah, 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 blah? And it's like, take a breath. We don't know what's happening in the moment. We're projecting into the future. We going into anxiety, and I'm certainly sensing a lot of that, So it really supports us in staying calm and staying present to the now moment, because it's only in the now moment that we can be the place of immaculate reception.
One of the things that's happened for me in the last few years since the pandemic, I never ever took it seriously in all of the years before that. It was learning some of the things about the cosmos and what is happening right now in today. Actually, is the first day that we've had this huge cosmic shift where the big power player in the planets, Pluto, is moving into Aquarius. The age of Aquarius has been, songs have been written about it, sung about it, but now, today, it's happening. And in the final exit of Pluto from Capricorn, which is all about structures and all about institutions and government, is going into a collective shift. And it is revolutionary in the way of political shifts. I did not expect it to happen the way it is unfolding. And yet, here it is. It's upon us.
And Mark, oh, excuse me.
And the one thing no human has control over is the cosmos. We do not have any control. It happens. And 250 years ago was the time of revolutionary wars around in different parts of the world, including this country, including France. 250 years ago, this is the last time that Pluto is going to be in that shift. And it's going to be there for 20 more years. And that's going to be past my lifetime. So I'm kind of amazed about this. Its focus is on global networks, technology and advancement in technology, extended communities that are bottom up rather than top down for the benefit of all. And it's not going to be about one person and their leadership. It is going to ultimately be about collaboration. It's a cosmic shift. And we have, interestingly, not as I expected, elected a person whose career has been made on dismantling.
You're fired.
Oh my God.
Well, the interesting thing is, Marge, that what you're talking about, the Pluto piece and Pluto and Uranus came in March, created a disruption, and we knew this it was came in March. The alignment started in March, and then it left in June, and it was coming back. So thank you for reminding me of that, because I knew it was coming back at the end of the year. And I saw something yesterday, but it didn't trigger it the way you just triggered it. I got to go look that up because, okay, now it's back again. and everything is going to shift because it is taking us out of the Capricorn, the earthbound third dimension, you know,
To
and
the sky.
sky.
The vastness.
And it's going to be here for over 20 years.
20
And
years.
so there are going to be changes that are going to be incredible. So the fact that you and I um, got the download that said
Talk
that
about the download.
the next, so I was sitting in meditation, and interestingly, I have somebody who comes, a handyman who comes, and he's very I want to use, I love him dearly. He's so sweet, but he is as, oh, what word? The word that comes to me, and I don't mean it derogatory, is he's as redneck as they come. And he said to me, Toni, you better get ready. He said, because there's a war coming. And I said, what kind of war? And he goes, a civil war. And I started thinking about it. And then when I was in meditation after the election, I get that we had just averted a civil war, but it was going to be a civil war that was going to be bigger than even the 1860s, because there were such two factions in this country, and the one faction was becoming what word do I want to use? I haven't really talked about this because you and I haven't even talked about it because we didn't want to.
But
Uh,
we've chosen not to until we could do it spontaneously live on the call.
yes, and that the factions were becoming so disgruntled that it was soon going to explode. It was like a ticking time bomb. And that's why we never know the big plan. And I got that all so clear that next day that all of that had been averted. Like that, it all collapsed. It just all collapsed. And even though there are people who are really, really sad, what they didn't realize is that this is just part of a plan, again, to be part of saving our planet. So what'd you get?
Oh, Ed and I were sitting at breakfast after the morning of the election, and both of us had voted for Kamala and had anticipated that this would be the way the election went. And we're both just feeling almost despair and disappointment. And as I close my eyes, as we always do in the morning, um, to bless the food, and I just left my eyes closed a little bit longer, and I got the results of this election have averted a civil war. I had never had that thought even cross my mind. No one had ever mentioned it to me, although we drive through Westport on the way to church every week, and Westport had one of the final battles of the Civil War, and over 6,000 Americans were killed, brothers killing brothers. And that is sobering to me that could happen right here in Kansas City, Missouri, right here in Westport Landing. And that was the download. And I posted something on the ministers discussion group page about that download. And when you mentioned it to someone, that person said to you, have you and Marj Britt been talking? We hadn't.
We hadn't. We hadn't. It was so clear to me that we just averted a civil war. Now, this is kind of like when Edison was doing the radio. He wasn't the only one. Marconi had the download. It's just downloads come to several people to see who's going to do what with them. So that becomes really important. And Marge, I left out a phase of my life that I really want to go back to that was
Well,
so.
here's one I want to go
Oh,
back
okay.
to. And this was the final picture.
Oh, yes.
And what you said about this picture, my life's work is retreats, classes, and facilitation of energy. And I'm going to choose to go just a little bit longer in this dialogue with you and have less time for aha experiences because I want you to be able to talk about these dynamics, which have been so important in your life, this facilitation of energy, especially from the third dimension into the bridge that is the bridge into the fourth, that once you get on that bridge and you see the bridge, there's no way back. The bridge gets blown up. It happened to me when I was a minister at Unity in Tustin. The bridge gets blown up. There's no way back. And so I'm really not holding any fear at all because I realize that we're crossing the bridge into the fifth dimension. So, talk about this thing that you have made your life's work now, this facilitation of energy and energy activation.
Okay. So it goes back to what I was just going to say to you. So you just picked up where, so in 2005, what I didn't tell you was I was vice president of Unity. I had 9 departments. It was everything in my whole world. I go to Peru. I spend 2 weeks with a shaman down in the Amazon. I mean, literally in a Swiss Family Robinson. We go to the jungle at night. I come back from that experience. I'm in meditation and I hear spirits say, you're done. And I go, done. Done what? Done what? You don't mean done at Unity. 3 times in meditation, Spirit says you're done. And then third time, I'm starting to get, yeah, he means at Unity. So I say, or she says, she means, I say to Spirit, as we sometimes do in our infinite wisdom, I say to Spirit, now this is 2005. I say to Spirit, okay, we've got the first class going through from the new school. At the end of that class next year, I will resign and wait to see what it is that you have next for me. I say this to Spirit, like I know something. I go to a retreat where Daniel Nahmod, this is like a day later, I go to a retreat, Daniel Nahmod is here, and we're dancing, and they had just waxed the floors in the activity center, which was kind of sloped. And I went to make a turn while I was dancing. I slipped. I became a projectile. My head hit the edge of a wooden seat handle. I hit my head. I knocked myself out, and I came to, and I had no short term memory. No short term memory. Everything that I thought I was, I lost in that moment. And it shifted my identity. Marge, this is the bridge that burns. You can't go back.
Yeah.
It's the bridge that burns. And I woke, it got me home. For 2 weeks, I just railed at God. How could you do this to me? How? I couldn't put 2 sentences together. I barely knew who I was. And I had always been, like you, March, one of the smartest women in the room. People would look to me for answers. I was always the best dressed person around, in my own mind and with my Gucci Moochie Poochie, and all that. And it was gone. It was gone. And then at that second week I was in meditation, I decided to pray. And I'm in meditation and I hear the words, yes, again, the Immaculate Conception. Yes. But it was a huge yes. And behind it came your empowerment system. Yes is your empowerment system. Stop fighting. The Immaculate Conception, I got it. I got it. I stopped fighting. I got up and I said, God, I don't know what you want me to do, but I'm ready and I will do it. 3 days later, now this is 2005, nobody's heard of this. I found Nikola Tesla's quote: "If you want to know how the universe works, think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency." And I took that quote and I said to myself, I am going to recreate my neural pathways by going into Fillmore's teachings and finding out what these words means. 2 years, pure study. During that time, I discovered unpublished works by Mr. Fillmore that he hand carried to the archives in 1946, 6 months before he died. And written on it says, "Save this till the world is ready." I found it. It was the story of Jesus' soul evolution and the initiations that we go through. The world wasn't ready for it in 46, but the world was ready for it in 2006. And so I got a group of people together. We took it out of the mimeograph. We copied it word for word, period for period, and we created a computer piece from it, a Word document. And I just started delving into energy, and then all these downloads started to come. Energy is the divine substance that underlies all manifestation. Energy is all around us. You even close your eyes, you can see the energy spinning. Vibration, Mr. Fillmore says, energy doesn't go anywhere unless it has a vibration to move it, to put it into motion. So because I started talking to Mr. Fillmore, and guess what? All of a sudden, Mr. Fillmore started coming, sitting on my shoulder. I mean, now talk about crazy, because that was pretty scary with my mother. And then Jesus would come to the other shoulder, just, you could say, just like there was a book called The Contemplation of Christ, Ernest Wilson. And that's what he said. He said Jesus came to him. Well, those two figures came to me. And so energy is the divine substance. Vibration puts it into motion. The big key is, what is the frequency level at which you are going to put it into motion? Are you going to put it into motion in third dimension in fear, greed, competition, ugliness, blame, shame, guilt? Or are you going to trust these principles and put them to work at a fourth dimensional and higher frequency in every moment of your life that says, that frequency that says, this is interesting. I don't know what's going on, but I'm going to sit back and be curious. And that began to change my life. I got called by Unity Worldwide Ministries. I was asked to head up the ministry consultant team, which at that time was really focused on conflict management. I started to see we can't be about conflict management. We have to be about energy management. Energy management. When we go into churches that are in trouble, this is about energy management. A piece of the energetic puzzle has come out of place because it wants to be rearranged. So I started writing best standards of practice for unity, for unity churches through board trainings, and putting all of that together, and started doing classes that were about conscious neutrality and taking them to a team of people that would then go out. And then this has been my life's work. And then into 2017, I left that because I really wanted to focus on just writing and just be. And then I went back for a little bit in 2021, rewrote a new board training that's all about energy management. People still don't understand it, but they will, because that's the way it works with me. People don't understand it in the beginning, but they'll catch up to it. And it's really teaching boards that it's all about this energy management. Everything. Spirit is energy. You are energy. Decisions are energy. Tension is energy. How do you want to use your energy? How do you want to spend your energy? Creatively, or do you want to be sucking your energy dry? You got to start crossing the bridge. You got to take that walk into that fourth dimension. Start being in surrender And then halfway through the bridge, you'll get to trust. And then once you get on that other side of trust, there's like no going back. It's like, it just does, you can't go back. It just, so this whole thing. And then I started to see that it's about activations. So the last book, so then I wrote a book called Energy Dynamics, Energy Mastery, because I started seeing so clearly energy mastery. And there it is. Marj has aerodynamics, energy mastery. And just this year, I completed initiations of remembrance, and they're all on Amazon. Initiations of remembrance, and it's so powerful. It's such a powerful book, because what I started to see is that from the first time that you have that glimmer of awakening in that Christ, that coming home of the I am, the moment that these are all initiations calling us to remembrance. And in 1990, I found my purpose statement. And my purpose statement is, and it brings me to here, I am a midwife for the birthing of the soul's remembrance. I am a midwife of the birthing of the soul's remembrance.
So beautiful, Toni. Just wonderful. And I want to take a pause for just a moment um, and invite everyone to remember that this platform is all funded by your donations. It's love offering based. My guidance has been not to charge for these kinds of teachings. The value is way beyond money. The value is about the energy of your soul and knowing who you are. And the value for you to receive it, it requires this giving loop. Giving and receiving are one energy. You give and it will be given unto you. So I invite you to give, and that will happen. Give and it will be given unto you. And the other thing that is so important for me is I've told Toni that she'll be able to leave the call by 30 minutes after the hour. So I do know that. And I am willing to stay on the call if some of the people on the call want to share their aha moments or moments where you experienced, oh my God, that happened to me, and share what you would like to share. This is ultimately about you and about your coming into knowing of your own journey of the soul. And it's about coming to know experientially who you are. It's not about trying to change you through the intellect. This goes way beyond the intellect. This is energy shift that comes from beyond the human mind. And so one of the things you shared that I loved, Toni, when we had the same download, you said, of course, it's about universal law. Do you want to share just a little bit more about that? And then we'll let you say goodbye to people before you have to leave at 30 minutes after the hour. And if you want to, you can also share your contact information.
Okay. Let me start with contact information. Otherwise, I'll might not. It's Rev Toni with an I, Rev Toni B, B is in Boehm, Rev Toni B at gmail.com. At gmail.com. So that's pretty simple. Rev Toni with an I, B at gmail.com. And my books are on Amazon. You can get them on Kindle, or you can even just go look and see the journey. Just look at the journey. So the one thing, Marge, that's come to me through the quote by Nikolai Tesla that I delve so deep in, and then use Fillmore's framework to really bring it forth, is the idea of universal law. And so this year I've been teaching the 7 Hermetic universal laws, and these laws, there's mutable laws and immutable laws, and the 3 immutable laws are one mind, one, and all is in the all is in the all. There's nothing outside the all. So even this election is not outside the all. Friends, we got to get that. Even the election's in the all. If there's only one mind, one presence, this election too is in the all and has come for some reason. Everything that happens to you. And then under that law is the law of as above, so below. And what I realized with my class, because I do a Tuesday morning advanced consciousness class, what I realized with my class is that, and we did this last week, we did a prayer for sacred government. As above, there's got to be a sacred government. If the cosmos, as Marj brought up with the zodiac movements, and if the universe knows how to do sunset and sunrise and doesn't have to be told, Mr. Fillmore says order is the first law of the universe. There's a government up there. There are angelic beings assigned to us to keep things in order. We have to open our eyes to this universal system of government and know that that is the government that reigns. And then I'll use the word pray and rain that energy down into this by who we be. And then the 3rd immutable law, and I love this because this comes from the ancient mystery schools and Hermes, the teachings of Hermes. Everything is vibration. We're talking thousands of years ago. They're already talking about the law of vibration, and everything is energy. And I'm not going to get into the 4 immutable laws that are underneath that, but they're laws that help us, because they do change, they help us remember the first 3 laws that are immutable. So there is this interconnected quantum level of us in which everything is interconnected. We are part of the one. Thus, everything is happening to us because we're all part of the all, and nothing is outside of the all. So that's the piece I'd like to say about that, Marj. Thank you so much for having me on this call. I really,
It's just been a great, great joy. Truly, I feel in my heart and my soul the awareness of our being soul sisters.
oh, we are soul sisters, Marj. You know, I love you. I love you. I love you. I mean, you came to my house and you stayed 3 weeks while Jay and I went away while you were going through your own things. It's where you got your call to Tustin. I wouldn't have had it any other way than to be a part of your story.
It's so incredible how our stories are absolutely intertwined. Even before we met, we were having the synchronistic events going on in our lives individually. And I could have just listed one after another that I didn't even talk about.
And you
So,
just said something, and here's another book that was a download. You said synchronistic events. I now call them synchro divinity, synchro
yeah.
divine events, because there is a universal presence as part of that universal law that is setting up these universal divine synchro divine events so that, like, you and I came together. There's no accidents, Marj. There's no accidents. It is synchro divinity creating synchro divine events and experiences in our lives. And the more we open to the immaculate reception, the more those things are like this, like that. Okay, I gotta go.
Been manifesting on earth. And actually, my coming to Kansas City is clearly part of something like that. And Holly, where I live, is part of that divine manifestation. I had no idea this street even existed. So,
Thank
Toni,
you.
much joy, much gratitude, and much deep, deep love.
Thank you. I love
And
you, my dear sister. And thank you, Garth, for everything you did. Thank you.
so we'll say goodbye, Toni, and We'll take a deep breath and just pause for a moment. And for those of you who would like to comment or share, I'd love to have you come online. So, Barbara Jan, I'm seeing you there. How beautiful it is. Any chance, Barbara, you would like to come online and share?
Okay. No, this is quite a heart-rendering um, lesson, I would say. Very spiritual, very uplifting, and it really unmystified a lot of things because, of course, the world is full of mysteries. And I think that a lot of those were unveiled today about the process and as life goes on. And I think it was a real blessing um, uh, to uh, to be a part of this today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ed. It's a joy to be able to hear your expression of your experience. And now I see Barbara Jan and Garth. Let's unmute Barbara. And I want to say hello to Barbara also. So, Garth, can you unmute Barbara?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear
You
me?
are. I can hear you.
I'm speechless after this program today. I just was so tuned into everything and the things about how we feel about what's going on in the world right now. That was really good because I sort of have been involved in thinking about all this as everyone else is. And I already have tried to let loose and just let go and let God and just know that what is happening, I can't explain, but it's happening and we just have to go with it and know that there's a plan. So
Great
that
plan.
was very helpful, and I just was fascinated by Toni's take on things. She's just such a wonderful, intelligent, warm person, and she's had a very interesting journey. So it was wonderful to have this. I would love to hear her again.
You
So
know, the things that's so interesting to me is to be able to hear people's life stories and the kinds of things that happened in her life that often spiritual teachers don't talk about. And for them to be willing to come onto a call like this and authentically talk about their childhood and their young adulthood and the kinds of things they didn't understand as well as how they dealt with things they didn't understand and and the shifts into the unknowing so important because the minute you think you know everything, what spirit knows is that you don't.
that is very true. And the older I get, because I'm in my fourth stage also, the more I know that that isn't true. And the more I want to open myself up to keep learning and curiosity. And I think that's so important. And you do find out that you don't know as much as you thought you did. And you have to keep learning. So this has been wonderful. It was a gift. Really, it was a gift. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Barbara. It's so good to see you, and thank you for coming on live. I just so deeply appreciate you. It's wonderful knowing you and loving you. So, beautiful gift. And Garth, I'd love to hear your take on this.
I'm happy to share. Ed, did you have something you wanted to
Yes.
interject?
Yeah, I just think that she offers some very, very healthy visions of life and the future in a very natural, normal, spiritual way. And it was quite interesting because I don't think that I think a lot of that unfolding of how we look at things and how they come into us and the optimism and the spiritualness that she offered, that Toni offered, was very important. That's it.
Thank you, Ed.
Okay. Okay.
So
All right.
I
Marj.
absolutely loved that introduction to Toni. I had no idea who she really was except by reading the email that we sent out. Um, and she and I started the conversation today with, I hear you work for this organization. Tell me more about it. And I said, well, uh, we'll get to that. What do you have to offer to the world? And she said, well, I have a lot of videos, but they all need editing. I said, well, I got somebody in mind. And so it was great to hear what she had to say and to imagine many projects coming out of this experience. So
It's incredible how the universe matches us up. It happened with you and I, Garth. I didn't know you, and you were referred to me by humanities team. And I had a glimpse 10 years ago that the time might come when I would be on humanities team. I even introduced myself to Steve Farrell once and gave him a copy of my book. Nothing happened. This is about effortless effort. When the universe arranges the effort, there's no effort on your part. It's effortless effort. And these kinds of things simply happen synchronistic, synchronicity,
synchronistically.
or Toni's word was even a better example. It's a divine synchronicity. and, and so I just am totally amazed. More to say, Barbara?
No, as I said, I just have so much to process from what we were involved in today. And I just was so immersed in this whole conversation. It just gives me a lot to think about too, relating to my own life and experiences.
Well, you and I are about the same age, I
Yeah.
think, if I'm remembering right. And
Yes, we are.
we're not done yet, Barbara.
No, no, I have lots of things going on and I'm able to travel. And so I've been doing that again and, being with friends and just enjoying the place that I am in my life right now.
Well, you're invited to come and spend some time with me. So come and spend a few days. And have you ever
Well,
been?
you never know. If you extend an invitation, I might show up.
Right. Have you been to Kansas City?
Yes, a long time ago I was there. But,
Well, I'd
um,
love to show you the Unity Village
Got some
again.
things to do.
It's
yes,
a
I would love to go to
wonderful
Unity Village. I haven't ever been there.
Okay, so it's a promise. I'll show you Unity on the Plaza, and which was the Founders Church, and I'll show you Ninth and Tracy where it all started. So
That sounds wonderful. That sounds exciting.
standing invitation. All you have to do is be able to navigate going down to the lower level where the guest bedroom is. But there's good handrails going down.
Well, that's all we need.
Oh, so beautiful. And so, as we bring this call to a close, thank you so much for those who have shared, those who have responded, those who also are called. called by that unnamed power that is beyond our human minds, love without an opposite, the universe revealing itself in our lives and through our lives. And so it is.
Amen.
And so we just take a moment. And so it is. Amen and amen. Next month, our call is going to be with Reverend Sandra Campbell, who is very actively involved in the Unity movement and one of the co-ministers at Unity on the Plaza ministerial team, and also very active with doing courses at Unity Village and in the Detroit Training School. She is chairing that board. And so I'm really looking forward to next month's call with Reverend Sandra Campbell. And we'll see you then. Deep gratitude and much love.
Thank you, Marge.